Greetings, everyone, and welcome. We're glad that you're joining us today for this very important and timely presentation. Just a few logistics, please utilize the Q&A should you have any questions throughout the presentation, and Isabella will attempt to get to those throughout or at the end. I'm Emily Smith, co-creator of Touchstone Central Coast. Mother Teresa said, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. According to the United Nations Food Program, the economic impact of the pandemic could result in doubling the number of people suffering acute hunger by the end of 2020. Currently, there are estimates that the COVID-19 pandemic may add between 83 and 132 million people to the number of undernourished in 2020. This is alarming. Jacques Diop says that hunger is not an issue of charity, it's an issue of justice. With us today, we have Isabella Brown, a registered dietitian from Central California. She completed her education at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, a local Amarada here, and her dietetic internship at Texas A&M University. Isabella strives to provide compassionate nutrition services to improve the mental and physical health of her clients and community. She is currently living in Nebraska with her husband and spends her free time, you can guess, cooking. Isabella shares a lot of wisdom and kindness through her social media channel, and you can find her on Instagram at Isabella Brown Nutrition. Welcome, Isabella.
Well, thank you for having me. Like Emily said, I'm Isabella Brown. I'm a registered dietitian, and today we're going to be talking about how to eat healthy and tailor that to your needs and your situation. Taking care of our health has become even more challenging during the pandemic. People have lost jobs, there's been food shortages, you can't go to the gym, you can't go out and socialize. So I hope this will help you live a healthier life, whatever that looks like to you. And at the very least, I hope you just get a new perspective on nutrition. There are 8 different aspects of health: emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, environmental, financial, occupational, and social. You probably came here only expecting to talk about nutrition, but nutrition's interconnected with all the other aspects of health. It's just a little piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't mean it's not important. But the reason I tell you this is so you don't get overwhelmed as we talk about this and start feeling guilty, because that's not my job. I'm not here to shame anyone or make you feel overwhelmed or guilty for what you are eating. My goal with nutrition is to improve other aspects of health, not take away from them. When I sit down with clients, one of the first things we talk about is what's getting in the way of them making healthy changes. So start thinking about your barriers, because thinking about barriers can help you develop strategies and goals to make healthy changes. And it's going to be personalized and more doable for you. Today, we're going to be focusing on money because the most common barrier is not motivation, it's time, money, knowledge, and support. So like I said, start thinking about your barriers and how you can overcome them in a way that works for you. What we eat is so personal, and it's influenced by many different factors: taste, access, cost, mood, hunger, culture, family. They all play a role in what we eat. Ask yourself, what drives my food choices? And recognize that there are many reasons why people eat what they do. So don't be judgmental about what's on someone else's plate. We don't know what they're going through. Maybe they can't afford certain foods. Maybe there's trauma they're using food to cope with. They might have a medical problem. So be kind and keep these things in mind. Once again, your values and your priorities are going to shape what you eat. That's why there isn't a one-size-fits-all recommendation for nutrition. I wish there was. It would make my job so much easier. but there is not. So just take the information you learned today and modify it to meet your needs, your values, and your circumstances. Once again, you're gonna know what's best for you. This is the reason I don't give out meal plans, because I'm never gonna know what's better for you than you will. My job is just to help give you the tools to make healthy changes to guide you on your path to a healthier life. Like Emily said, food insecurity is a growing problem. We talked about the different factors that affected food choice, and one of those is food insecurity. In 2018, 1 in 9 Americans were estimated to be food insecure. And now it's 50 million and likely to grow because of the pandemic. Sometimes we think food insecurity looks like being super thin, that it's probably very obvious, and it could be, but often it's not. A lot of times it's your neighbors, your friends, the people in your community. What food insecurity is not having a consistent access to food to live a healthier life. Groups most at risk are African Americans, Latinos, seniors, children, rural communities, people with disabilities. It affects children's ability to learn in school. It forces people to have to choose between household goods, medication, education, or food. And most people who are food insecure don't even qualify for food assistance programs. Someone may be food insecure because of lack of transportation. There isn't a grocery store in town. They lost expected income. I don't think I really understood what food insecurity looked like until I moved to the Midwest. Lincoln is a little bit different, but before we were in Missouri, and we were in a rural town, and there was only one store in the whole town. The food was expensive. It was poor quality. A gallon of milk was $4, and most people made $8 an hour. I mean, I love vegetables and fruits, but I didn't even want to buy these things. And you might have people who are working 2 jobs, they're working long hours, or they finally retired after working all their lives, and now they can't afford food. I worked in a hospital in that town, and I really saw the impact it had on people's well-beings. It contributed to malnutrition, which caused people to stay in the hospital longer, have worse health outcomes, and cost more money to the individual, but also the community as a whole. So you may not be experiencing food insecurity, but it's a real problem. And if you are, I really am sorry. I don't understand exactly what you're going through, but my heart really does go out to you, because it's something no one should ever have to deal with. And it is a complex issue, and I hope in the future we can all work together to solve this. I wanted to share some resources with you. SNAP is the most common food assistance program in the United States. It's formerly known as food stamps. The idea was to stretch people's dollars so they could have more food or use their budget to provide for shelter or other costs. But most people have to end up using it for their entire food budget. Gas stations, farmers markets, grocery stores, and even Costco now will usually accept SNAP benefits. But if you don't know which stores do, you can use the locators, the USDA SNAP retailer locator or the USDA Finney member locator. They're both online through the USDA website. WIC is another program. It's the most effective government food assistance program we have. Women that are pregnant, infants, children under 5, women that are breastfeeding can use WIC up to a year after giving birth. But unfortunately, not everyone who meets the income levels will get those benefits. It puts those who are at most nutritional risk first, so they get top priority. So usually if you're underweight or you're anemic, you're more likely to get those WIC benefits. But the recipients get nutritious food packages, health screenings, breastfeeding support, and nutrition education. And they also can get breastfeeding infant formula if they aren't breastfeeding. But if you are breastfeeding and you're having issues or you are looking for more education, WIC is a great resource. I personally don't have kids, and I intern with them during my dietetic internship, and I learned so much. I had no idea what life was like after giving birth. Everyone always talks about the birthing process, but breastfeeding can be challenging, and they're a great resource. Also, check out churches, colleges, local food banks, Meals on Wheels, for if they are having any food assistance programs or any meals available. Foodfinder.us is a website you can use to help find food banks too. The USDA also has a hunger hotline you can text for information, and they run the My Plate website, which is full of nutrition knowledge and healthy recipes. And I can post these linked to my website or send an email later if you would like these links. So the number one way you can help is donating money to your local food bank. Because of COVID, there's been a lack of volunteers, and it's a lot easier for the food banks just to order the food themselves, so they're getting what they need. They don't have to worry about a bunch of people coming in and helping sort. So donating food is the best way, but call your organization to see what they need. Mine asked for diapers because they are so expensive, and it helped people use more money to buy food or shelter or whatever needs they had. And then if you are going to donate food, don't donate dented cans because they might have bacteria in them and not be as safe. Also, please build your food supply slowly. I'm all for prepping for disasters and being responsible, but most people live paycheck to paycheck and can't buy a bunch of food at once. So if you take all the bread and milk, there's not anything left for people who didn't have that food supply. Also, if it has a WIC label and you don't receive WIC, please leave that, especially during a time of food shortage. It's okay during normal life when things are a little bit more stable and we have an abundance of bread and other items, but during these times, it's better to leave those for others. So just be considerate. Also, write to local leaders about issues contributing to poverty and food insecurity. Maybe you can talk to them about creating or more funding for food assistance programs or having grocery stores in certain locations, whatever you feel like is the need of your community. And be mindful about spreading COVID as well. Most people who are food insecure can't afford to get sick, even if it's something as simple as the flu. Medical bills are expensive and they can't afford to lose time at work. Food insecurity, like I said before, is a complex issue. And you may not be able to help by giving food, but ask yourself, what are my talents and gifts that I can give? And how can I help my community using my unique abilities? Now let's transition to what to eat for a healthier life. Healthy meals, a lot of times we think of are brown rice, grilled chicken, kale, and that can be a healthy meal, but it doesn't have to be. This is the diabetic plate method. It's a tool I like to use to help my patients structure their meals. Start by imagining a 9-inch plate. A quarter of that plate's gonna be carbohydrate foods. So that's your starchy vegetables, your grains, fruit. The other quarter of your plate, protein. So meat, fish, eggs, beans, tofu. And then half of your plate, non-starchy vegetables. So that's gonna be pretty much every vegetable besides potatoes, peas, and corn. Also, adding a cup of dairy with your meal, so that could be milk, yogurt, fortified soy beverage, and about 1 to 2 tablespoons of fat to help you stay full. And preferably an unsaturated fat, so like avocado or olive oil, but any fat would be fine. It's really easy to get uptight with this plate, but it's just a tool. It's not a restrictive rule. For example, your sandwich bread might be a little bit bigger than a quarter of your plate. That's okay. Or maybe you didn't eat veggies for breakfast. I don't. What about carrots and dip for a snack? The main focus is different food groups, a variety, choosing high fiber, satisfying foods with lots of nutrients. And your plate may not look like this, so talk to a dietitian or a doctor to see what your needs are and what things you need on your plate. Here's an example of some balanced meals. Pasta, the noodles, this is a little bit bigger portion than I talked about, but the noodles would be the carbs. Maybe there's some meat in your pasta sauce, that could be your protein. Tomatoes, that would be your vegetable. Sandwiches, the carbs are the bread. Tuna or deli meat could be your protein. The toppings would be your veggies. Stews, soups, curries, those are all very balanced. Same thing with tacos. Tortilla could be your carbs, meat for protein, onions, jalapenos, radishes, those could all be veggies too. The big takeaway is everything in moderation. Over the last 7 years, if there's anything I've learned, it's that no food is magic by itself, and all work together to help you live a healthier life. And as humans, we like variety. And when our diet's restrictive, we binge and we feel out of control. So keep that in mind, everything in moderation. What you eat might be as important as how you eat. This is a diagram by Jessica Setnick. She's an eating disorder dietitian. And she said, when you sit down at a meal, first sit down actually, download your thoughts. Are you stressed, anxious, happy? Then pick what you're gonna do right after the meal. Are you gonna clean, go do homework, go see more clients? Picking that activity is gonna help prevent those binges, obsessiveness over what you ate. It's gonna help you move on with life. Then review your compassionate reminders. For example, no matter how much I ate early in the day, I still need to eat when I'm hungry. Then start eating. Finish half of your meal. Ask yourself, could I eat an apple? This helps you identify where you are hunger-wise. You may not be able to eat an apple, but you still want to finish your meal because it tastes so good, and that's okay. But just recognize that you're eating because of taste or because you're stressed, not because of hunger. And after the meal, accept what happened and just move on. Eating is a learning opportunity. We don't need to feel guilty. We don't need to beat ourselves up about it. Just write down things you would do differently next time and go right to that post-meal activity. Like I said, this is all just a learning opportunity. Now, how to tackle the grocery store. Before you go to the grocery store, take an inventory. What needs to be used ASAP? Then create a meal plan so you have a specific list when you go to the grocery store. It's really easy to be picking things that look good, you may need, but don't really need. I mean, I do it. With COVID, more stores are doing curbside pickup. And now their prices are online, so you can check to see what your bill is going to be before you even go to the store. Ibotta or grocery store apps can also help you find some really good deals as well. When creating meal plans, base your meals off of what needs to be used first. Ask yourself, what do I already have? What meals do I like to eat? What do I need for meals? Can I make multiple meals with the same ingredient? Pinterest, if you have internet, is a really good tool Here are some example boards I made. I really like to create boards by ingredients. So you can see I have celery, bok choy, beets, black beans. When I have that ingredient in my fridge and I know I need to use it soon or it's going to go bad, I can just pull up that board and find all the recipes that use celery or that use beets, and it helps me with that meal planning process. Plant Jammer, Supercook, Magic Fridge, these are all great apps too. They show you how to use up some of those ingredients in your fridge. They may charge for some services, so just look out for that. I honestly did not know this before I moved to Lincoln. I actually called my mother-in-law asking her how much I should be spending on groceries. And I get asked this a lot. But I found that the USDA actually updates every month what the average cost of food is per week. And this is all throughout America. So you may live in New York and it may be more expensive, or if you live in Lincoln, Nebraska, it might be not as expensive. But at the low end, they estimate about every week, $45 for men, $40 for women, and on the high end, $90 for men and $80 for women. Feeding America has more data on your specific area, but it's not updated as often. But the usual average cost per meal is $2.50 to $3.50. All these, Walmart, Costco, Food for Less, Grocery Market, these tend to be cheaper grocery stores, but it's all going to depend on your area. I also recommend you search Latin, Asian, African, and Eastern European markets for 2 reasons. One, they're family owned usually, so you're helping local business owners who probably have been impacted by the pandemic. And 2, superfoods aren't, or what the media considers superfoods, aren't originally from the US, so they're going to be cheaper at these stores. For example, quinoa and chia seeds are cheaper at Latino grocery stores because that's where those foods originate from. You also can find many flavorful ingredients, spices, sauces that you probably can't find at the chain grocery stores. If you've been wanting to try an ingredient, but it's expensive, try Googling where it's from. And let's say it comes from Korea. See if there's a Korean grocery store in your area. Maybe you can find it at a better price and also help some of those local grocery stores. There's an old rule that you should just shop the perimeter, but that's kind of outdated now. There are lots of canned and frozen foods that are nutritious, they have long shelf life, and they're inexpensive. When you go to the store, also look for the price per weight. You can find this on the sticker. This is from the USDA's website. You can see that the larger container of yogurt costs more initially, but by weight, it's a better deal. This works if you're going to eat a lot of yogurt, but if you're only going to use a tablespoon and throw away the rest of the container, it's better just to buy the smaller container. So it's only a good strategy if you use a large amount of that food. Pre-washed and pre-packaged foods are usually more expensive as well. For example, if you're going to buy the chopped and washed lettuce, that's going to be more expensive than the regular head of lettuce that you got to peel and chop yourself, or frozen veggies in those steamer bags versus the big bags. If money isn't a concern for you, but time is, you may want the more convenient option, but it's going to cost you more. Also, you don't have to buy brand names. As humans, we really like familiar things, so we tend to be drawn towards these, but there's usually very little difference in the product. Most foods are made in the same facility actually, but they just stamp different labels and different packages on them and ship them off. So they're pretty similar. Where people see the most difference is usually your drinks and your yogurt. So if you can't tell the difference though, just buy the generic because it's going to be cheaper for you. and check the labels to make sure it's what you want. For example, the other day I went to the grocery store, bought chocolate chips, and the brand name was had chocolate chips, and the generic was chocolate flavored chocolate. So that's something kind of thing you want to look out for. Buying in season can also save you money. Use the seasonal food guide and the USDA seasonal produce guide to help you see what's in season in your area. In-season food is going to be cheaper, it's going to look better, and it's going to taste better. I wanted to go over a nutrition label real quick. Before I say this, just talk to your doctor and your dietitian, if you have one, to see what your needs are. Everyone's going to be a little bit different based on what's going on in their life. But the first thing is look at that serving size. Let's say the serving size says 1 cup and I eat 2 cups. I'm going to have to double everything on that label, do a little bit of math. And then go to calories. Everyone is going to be different. And I went back and forth whether or not I should include calories because it can vary so much. With snacks, most people need at the very minimum 450 calories per meal. On the high end, it's really going to depend on your body, and it can change day to day. So go by your hunger usually. Then look for products that are lower in saturated and trans fat, because these types of fats can increase our risk for heart disease. And the poly, mono, and unsaturated fats do the exact opposite. So the unsaturated fats are going to protect your heart. We pay attention to sodium because it raises blood pressure and makes you feel bloated. In a meal, aim for less than 500 milligrams of sodium, and a snack less than 180 milligrams. I know the keto diet's very popular, but you don't have to be afraid of carbs. They give us lots of energy, lots of nutrients, help our brains function properly. In a meal, we usually recommend 35 to 60 grams of carbs per meal, and then choose high fiber foods that are lower in sugar, higher in fiber to promote gut health and keep you feeling full. If a food has more than 3 grams of fiber per serving, we usually consider it a high fiber food. Protein's also going to make you feel more full, more satisfied. So look for products that at least have a few grams of protein if you're not going to add a protein-rich food on top of that. The first ingredient listed is going to be the #1 ingredient used. And it's okay if you can't pronounce it. I know people get really scared of that. But if you see thiamine mononitrate, that's vitamin B1, which is a vitamin that's natural and we eat often. And I'm not even going to try to say that first one, but you can see it's just caffeine. And I wouldn't have known that just looking at the nutrition label. But if you're concerned about any ingredients and their safety, check the USDA and the FDA website. One ingredient I do try to limit is the partially hydrogenated oils, just because they're a type of trans fat and they can increase our risk for heart disease if we consume them too often. As you can see, there are lots of healthy foods in the middle aisles. Here are some grains in the middle aisles that you can use to build healthy meals. You have rice, pasta, peas, ramen, oats, potatoes, corn, cereal, tortillas, bread, popcorn, crackers. The whole grain items are going to give you more fiber and nutrients compared to the high sugar, low fiber items. But if you don't have the option of, say, all you have is white pasta or white rice, you don't have brown rice or whole wheat pasta, just try to add more protein and vegetables to your blood sugar to help keep it, or more protein and vegetables to keep your blood sugar more stable, prevent that moodiness, and give you more energy. A lot of people avoid ramen because it is high in sodium, but you can just use a little bit of that flavor packet or none of it and add some veggies and a chicken or an egg, and you have a balanced meal right there. Cereal is another one that gets a bad rap, but it actually can be pretty nutritious. A while back, the government looked at what people ate and what they were deficient in, and they saw a lot of people were eating cereal and they were deficient in these nutrients. So they said, well, we're going to add all those nutrients to cereal so that way people don't have all these deficiencies. So if you only have $5 and you only can buy 1 or 2 items, cereal and milk might be a good option for you. They both have vitamins and nutrients, and the milk has protein, has carbs, fat, and the cereal has some fiber. A lower sugar, high fiber cereal is going to give you the most nutrients and the most benefits, but you can always mix and match bran with a higher sugar cereal. I encourage you to have variety and different foods, of course, but during times when we don't have a lot of options, this could be a good option for you. Here's some healthy proteins in the middle aisle. You have canned beans, tuna, chicken, yogurt, eggs, peanut butter, beans, nuts, frozen meats, milk, cheese, tofu. The canned meats and beans can be used in casseroles, burritos, sandwiches, soups. They're very versatile, and they're not going to go bad for years. I use them all the time in my cooking. My husband actually asked me, because I said, what can I do to, improve our meals and make them taste better? And he's like, well, can we just not have beans at every single meal? So I use them quite a bit. Both dried and canned are healthy. Just if you're worried about the sodium, just rinse them under water to take some of that salt off. I'm not a huge fan of protein powders because they're usually pretty expensive and unnecessary. But if you're having trouble getting enough calories in, or you have a low appetite because maybe you have something going on with your health that's causing that, that can be a good way to get some extra calories. It's also, if you buy the generic brand, can be a good option for food storage because all you need is milk or water. It can give you calories, protein, carbs, and a little bit of vitamins. So that's something to consider. But of course, if you can eat the lots of fresh or a variety of foods, that is recommended. I love canned and frozen veggies. People have concerns about them, about their safety, but they are safe. They're inexpensive, stay good for a long time. They're also usually canned and frozen at their peak. So they have a lot of the same nutrients that your fresh vegetables will, and you can eat them year round, which is nice. People also forget that pasta, soup, salsa also count as vegetables. And so keep that in mind if you're at a gas station and there isn't anything else around. You don't have any frozen vegetables or canned, and all you have is maybe some salsa. And don't use dented cans because the bacteria can grow on that pretty easily. So even if it's in the clearance section, if it's dented, I would avoid that. With the fruit, look for fruit in 100% fruit juice or water. The dried fruit is going to have more sugar. It's probably not as filling as canned or frozen fruit. So it may be better in desserts or as a sweetener in your food. I like to talk about the different labels that are on our food because marketing companies are very sneaky and they use all these buzzwords to get you to, one, be afraid of certain foods and to buy their products. So first we'll start with organic. Organic must be grown without the use of synthetic herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, or GMOs. That doesn't mean it can't have any pesticides. It just means that the pesticides they use can be made in a lab. So it could have the same compounds and the same molecules, but one just has to be made, I guess, in nature, while the other one can be made in a lab. There are also, animals can't be given any antibiotics, but I want to stress that no matter what, if it's organic or not organic, you're not going to have antibiotics in your meat. The milk and meat is tested to make sure there aren't any traces of antibiotics. Sometimes antibiotics are used if the farmer is worried about an animal getting sick, or if the animal does get sick, they'll be given that to prevent or treat that illness. Just like with humans, doctors, farmers try not to use them when they aren't needed because it is an added cost. And there's no nutritional difference between the organic and conventional that we've seen. If you are worried about the chemicals on your food, just give them a little extra scrub when washing them. Natural food, well, natural label is very loosely defined. It's not super regulated. You can't alter the product to where it's something completely different. So you can't have you can have natural cookies or chips because that's not a different product. It doesn't always mean it's healthy. Grass-fed is 100% grass-fed after being weaned from the mother's milk, so they don't get the traditional grain mixture that most animals would get. It has a little bit more vitamins, but it's very insignificant compared to the high cost. Once again, you're not going to find antibiotics in your meat, even though they can use antibiotics in the animal during its lifetime. GMOs are genetically modified organisms, which means that the DNA is changed either through breeding or bioengineering. GMOs are safe. They help farmers make more crops that look good, taste good, store longer. Sometimes they're even more nutritious. In Africa, they were seeing a lot of people were going blind because of vitamin A deficiencies. So they created this yellow rice to get more vitamin A. It was fortified with vitamin A, so that way people would be eating that vitamin A. So that was one of the benefits of GMOs. GMOs will also reduce food waste, make food more affordable. Working in the food industry is not easy. Farmers, a lot of times just rely on good weather and just hope for the best. So having GMOs helps both the farmer and us, because the farmer gets good crops and we get an abundance of affordable food. Here are some other terms. Reduced fat. It often takes out healthy fat, but adds sugar in. I see this a lot in peanut butter, so just check that. Multigrain just means they use multiple grains. It could be any grain. It doesn't have to be a whole grain, just any grain. Light is 50% lower in calories and fat or fat than the original product. And gluten-free is just missing the protein gluten that's found in wheat. They're usually lower in fiber and nutrients than the regular product. So if you don't have to cut gluten out of your diet, I recommend you don't. It's going to be your choice and your preference what you're going to buy at the store and what kind of foods you choose to buy. Just keep in mind, it is a privilege to have that choice. Most people don't get to decide between organic or conventionally grown food. So when you're pressuring people to buy these certain products or making posts about how GMOs are toxic, one, make sure your information is correct. And two, remember that without these modern farming practices, people won't be able to afford food or have access to fruits and vegetables. So just be considerate. Some other things, weigh the cost of benefits of what you're buying. It's really up to you on what's going to be most important for you and give you the most benefit. For example, there may be an 88-cent bread with 1 gram of sugar versus a $4 bread with no sugar. For me, 1 gram of sugar is not going to be a big deal. So I'm going to choose the 88-cent bread. Or convenience versus cost. Maybe you might like to save time and you're willing to pay an extra buck to get your food chopped for you ahead of time. We live in a culture that's so scared of our food, but we don't have to be. It always makes me so sad when people feel bad for eating because they think the food they have is dangerous or unhealthy. Keep in mind that health is a continuum, and just do the best you can. because at the end of the day, all the healthy changes are for you. So they should be benefiting you and making you happy. Also, look for versatile ingredients, items that can be used in multiple meals, like eggs, bread, cheese, beans. These are all very versatile. Quickly about supplements. We say supplements are usually expensive P because they aren't regulated unless they have the USP sticker. So if you are, say, a pregnant woman or trying to get pregnant and you need a vitamin that works, look for that USP sticker, but always talk to your doctor before starting a medication or a supplement. One last thing is to look out for diet culture messages. It's this idea that worships thinness. Its ideals, some of its ideals are thinness is equal to being good or superior. Losing weight will lead to a better life, more money. It demonizes certain ways of eating. So if you eat quote unquote junk food, you're bad, you're lazy, unmotivated. And worst of all, it puts down people that don't feel that ideal look. Some diet culture messages you'll see around you are advertisements for weight loss programs, clean eating, claims that seem too good to be true, before and after pictures. These messages are so easy to get caught up in. I even do it sometimes. It's a problem because diet culture has racist, misogynistic, and ableist roots. And I'm telling you this because it affects people who are at most risk for food insecurity. It's used to convince people to buy products that are a waste of money, can be damaging to your mental health, and if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So I encourage you to identify diet culture messages, don't engage in it, and don't promote it. So going back to the grocery shopping, after you get home, use your oldest food first to prevent waste. And for safety, don't leave your food on the counter for more than 2 hours. When it comes to dairy, expiration dates aren't a huge concern. Just smell it to make sure it smells okay. There aren't any clumps. You can cut mold on hard cheese, so you don't have to throw away the whole block. And if you aren't planning on using your meat in 4 days, freeze it by tightly wrapping it in foil, or you can put it in a freezer bag. That also works. Just when you thaw it, make sure you're not leaving it on the counter. You're thawing it either in the fridge or under cold running water. And if your meat starts to turn a little brown, that happens naturally. It doesn't mean you automatically have to throw it out unless it's sticky, smelly, or slimy. Also, eggs tend to last past the expiration date. If you're not sure about them, you can always put them in a pot of water. If they rise to the top, you're going to want to throw them out. Unlike cheese, if your bread is moldy, you want to toss it and store it in your cupboard or your freezer over your fridge to keep it fresh and not getting stale. Most vegetables are good for 3 to 5 days. Carrots, cabbage, potatoes, and onions tend to last a little bit longer. Also, store your fruits and vegetables separately. Now, how to actually cook your food. Try different cooking methods. I know a lot of people don't like vegetables because their parents just boil them in a pot and they were kind of bland. So try roasting and frying. Use sauces and dips if you're not used to eating vegetables. I know my mom would actually do the spray cheese whiz to get us to eat broccoli. So it's just starting where you're at. My favorite trick is roasting or is microwaving veggies. It's a lot easier than finding an oven. You just put some veggies in a bowl, 2 tablespoons of water, cover, and microwave 3 to 5 minutes, and they're cooked. And you can do this with fresh or frozen. Roasting is going to bring out some of those flavors, and it's just so easy. So set your oven to 425. Chop your veggies into evenish pieces. They don't have to be exactly even. Then add seasoning. So salt, pepper, garlic, onions, whatever you like. It could be curry powder, rosemary, be creative. Put some olive oil on it. You don't want the oil to be dripping. You just want enough to where the vegetables are coated and not dry. If you don't have that oil, you're not going to get that nice crispy texture. Then spread out onto a baking sheet lined with foil. Don't use parchment paper or keep your vegetables close together because they're going to steam and you're going to get kind of mushy vegetables. Then put them in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes, but your heartier vegetables, like potatoes, are probably going to take closer to 30. I'll be honest with you, I just learned how to cook chicken. YouTube has taught me everything I know. So if you forget what I said, because it's so much information, you can always check YouTube. First, dry your meat with a paper towel, pound it out so it gets that it's nice and even. You don't need a hammer or mallet, just whatever tool you have. Put seasonings on it, whatever you have in your fridge. Then let the chicken sit at room temperature. But you don't want to leave it out for more than 2 hours because then you can get, it can be unsafe. Heat up a pan on medium-low heat. Once it's hot, add some oil, add your chicken. Once your chicken, half of it has that white color on that bottom, flip it and cook on the other side for at least 2 minutes. You're gonna want it to be firm, but still have a little bit of give. And then this is key. You take it off and you just let it sit. Don't try to cut it to check to see how it looks because then you're gonna get super, super dry chicken. Tofu, a lot of people are scared to try it, but it's easy to make. You cut in cubes, press it with a skillet, and then just coat with seasonings, whatever you like, cornstarch, or you can use flour, and then just pan fry it. Just put a little oil in a pan and cook until brown and toasty. Here are some other ideas on how to use frozen and canned foods. You can add vegetables or some type of protein to ramen, or use tomato soup and pair with a grilled cheese sandwich. Burritos, those are all easy to make. Burritos and quesadillas can be made in the microwave or stove with canned beans. Also remember that salsa is a vegetable and you can use frozen peppers as well. Fill tuna and tuna sandwiches. You can add frozen veggies to your pasta, fried rice. If you go to takeout, you can take whatever you got at the restaurant, take it home, add it to whatever vegetables. You can turn your chicken nuggets into a crispy chicken salad. Chili beans, put on top of a potato. You can add some frozen veggies to your soup. Curries can also be made with a lot of canned items like tomatoes, coconut milk, garbanzo beans, frozen vegetables. Use cereal and as a cheaper granola, just like the burritos, nachos. As long as you're not just covering everything in cheese and you're more vegetables than cheese, it can be healthy. Same thing with pizza. You can use canned vegetables or frozen. And you can also use tortillas or bread if you don't have that pizza dough crust. Lastly, I want to remind you that healthy eating is not one size fits all. You don't have to give up on your culture. I did this for so long because I felt foods were bad or they were forbidden foods, but all foods can fit. On Instagram, Latina Dietitian does a great job of explaining this. She talks about growing up eating white rice and how that's part of her culture, and she doesn't really like brown rice as much. So instead of never eating white rice, because it may not be what she was seen as the healthier option, she added extra vegetables for more fiber and protein to add or to balance her blood sugar. So not only can you incorporate foods you love, but I encourage you to do so because you're making these healthy changes for you and they should make you happy and make your life better. So here are some Instagram accounts I love. Latina Dietitian, who I just mentioned, Constant Kitchen, they're always posting easy meals. Eat Well Exchange has a huge focus on culture and food insecurity. Clancy Harrison has been working also to fight food insecurity. Double Dose of Vitamin C and Cook Smart. They have so many meal hacks and give out really helpful tips. And lastly, Nutrition Diversified. It's a place to find dietitians and recipes from all over and from different backgrounds. And speaking of Instagram, if you'd like more tips or you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Isabella Brown Nutrition, or you can go to my website. I'm most active on Instagram, but my website is isabellabrownnutrition.com. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you were able to learn something from this. So I will see if we have any questions.
Okay, Isabella, we had a couple of people who put their hands up, and see if we can get to them real quick. Yeah. Katie, you had your hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk right now if you want to ask your question. Oh, let me unmute you for some reason. Let's see. I don't know why it's not unmuting you. Hang on one sec. Can you cook white and brown rice together is her question.
So brown rice takes a little bit longer to cook. My recommendation would actually be to cook them separately and use them throughout the week. You can reheat them in the microwave, usually with like a tablespoon of water, cover it, put it in the microwave, and that way you can use the portion you want when you want it. Because if you do the brown rice and the white rice together, it might get kind of mushy.
Okay. And then there was somebody who, I think it was E, had her or his hand up also. And if they could write their question in the Q&A, which can be found at the bottom, would be awesome.
Super awesome. And while people are putting chats in, we would love to answer your questions. And before we get to everybody else's questions, and while people are thinking of them, Isabella, we have one last question for you. Emily and I, as co-creators of Touchstone Central Coast, endeavor to work every day in a mode of leading with love. And when you hear those words, what does leading with love mean to you, Isabella?
For me, in my field, I would say it's not being judgmental about what other people are eating or how their bodies look, and also offering the same compassion to myself.
I just have a comment, Isabella. I was taken by the you sharing the impact of our individual stockpiling. You know, when COVID came on, we were all running and stockpiling all kinds of things. And I really just want to thank you for bringing to light that the individuals who are struggling financially can't do that. They don't have the ability to do that. And by us going in and doing that, we remove the ability for people to get the things that they need on a weekly or biweekly, you know, bi-monthly basis or something because of the way their money and cash flow is. And so I appreciate that you said that and brought light to that. That was very meaningful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout your presentation, Isabella, you had me laughing and thinking and wondering and praising myself and worrying about if I'm doing the right thing sometimes. So we, Emily and I really, really appreciate your bringing yourself to this program today, because you're clearly a beautiful, empathetic, resourceful, full of advice, and non-judgmental. That's the one thing that hit me at the very beginning. And I so much appreciate that, because you bring along your own lovely and varied personal experiences from being raised in the Central Valley of California to now here you are in Nebraska by route of Missouri. So you've had a lot of visits to different kinds of grocery stores, and your research and your wisdom has just been wonderful here today.